Let's go. In the top right, we do have Liquid Clem. And no cat. In the bottom left, it is MaxPax. So typical matchup nowadays for the Open Cups when both of them actually play in them. They do frequently face each other. It's not this matchup, it's another PvT in the form of MaxPax versus Hero Marine. But I believe MaxPax, Hero Marine was facing Lambo in the other semifinal. Something along those lines. Or no, Kelazur, that's what it was. Yeah, Hero Marine actually got knocked out a little bit earlier in this Open Cup. Anywho. Didn't get to cast this side of the semifinals, so here we are. Winner does go on to face the winner of Lambo versus Kelazur. General spoil. But typically, I mean, for a while, Clem was favored against MaxPax. And then, for a few weeks there, MaxPax was favored against the Terrans, both Clem and Hero Marine. But it does go back and forth. I don't think we've really decided who is the better player. I just think overall everything combined, including their other results and other matchups, and their likeliness to win the Open Cups, Clem and Hero Marine still in my head are still favored to win against MaxPax. But MaxPax definitely makes them work for it. It feels like MaxPax has also been, I don't know, not falling back on bad habits, because it's just, when you choose a build, it's got to be very decisive, right? A bad habit would be like misclicking the same upgrade over again, or F2ing more than you should, something like that. But when I say he's falling back into bad habits, I'm talking about his insistence on making like 4-gate blink work. It just felt like something he was doing over and over and over again, and not, I thought, a particularly good reason for it. And then he stopped and started doing other things and only throwing it in once in a while like you would expect. And I was like, oh, I think this is much better. And then he went back to being someone who just forget it all the time. So I don't know what he does here, but already we have something different, not a 4-gate. So I'm happy with that. It's going to be a proxy. Proxy. It's a Stargate. It's going to be a bit delayed, but we are going up to 150 gas. Proxy. Gateway. She added a second gateway just slightly before that. I was gonna say that would be a terrible proxy Stargate. But I suppose maybe it also would have been very deceiving. Reaper scouts a stalker. And it's like, no way they're proxy Stargating me. It also would be different in all manners of speaking, because if it's not that, and Clem sees that it is a second gateway here, which I'm looking at the wrong person, then you can kind of already conclude the second gateway, no other forms of technology, it's probably a proxy gate. Adept's already over trying to cause some distractions, but Clem has already chosen basically from the get-go to go for a very safe opener. High ground expansion is going to ensure that he doesn't take big losses to something like this. And yeah, MaxPax just been throwing out this third gateway proxy opening aggression more lately, which is why I was saying, you know, if it was a proxy Stargate, even as weird as it would be, it at least would be really different. I don't think Clem would expect it. Not that that necessarily makes it inherently good. In this case, maybe it would have. Maybe it would have. There's no Cyclone. But I think Clem picked up on what MaxPax was doing, because MaxPax has been doing it frequently recently, and by going for a tank first, he should lock up the fences on his main, and very soon his natural as well. Yeah, the tank's just supremely good in the situation. A Cyclone would also be okay. It just might be pounced upon should the supply depot fall. Not that it really should ever fall. I guess even pros sometimes pull the SCVs a bit late to the supply depots, and one of them's below half health, but assuming there is no wall, then the Cyclone might be in more trouble than the tank, but both of them would have been in trouble, assuming there is a wall. Both probably take care of it. Cyclone, just not as much of a bully. One unit at a time with the Cyclone, right? Tank, siege up, got that range, got that area of effect, and MaxPax can only stay around for so long, with the second tank almost already out. Could position it here, It's gonna cover most of this area, and if MaxPax sticks around in the actual natural, which is exactly what he's doing, the reasoning of his proxy gateway, then he could maybe do a little bit more distracting, a little bit more picking off of the units, but as far as actually hitting the economy really hard, that's not really gonna happen. Now MaxPax's economy, I've actually got one shot. MaxPax's economy was hit with all of this, for sure. The third Nexus is still not yet done, and they actually prioritized Robotics Bay before that third Nexus, so I think there was a choice there, and this is what he chose. But I guess you could argue that for him, he likes to be in control, so even if the first attack, whatever it is, the proxy gates, the 4-gate blink, isn't successful in killing his Terran opponents, it's still a game that he likes to play out. And that's the only thing I could really come up with when he was doing so many of the same build over and over again, was that ultimately he still liked how it played. So it wasn't necessarily about winning the game right off the bat, which he wasn't doing very frequently, because the Terrans were really hardcore defending against it, but it was opening up other ways of, I guess, controlling the game. That maybe a Protoss who just goes typical 3-base, 3-gas situation doesn't, not until they have all their gateways lined up. So you do have a bit of a presence on this side of the map, as Blink is done. The Stalkers are still free to be here. Now, will they get any more damage done? Maybe they do after this tank, but I think that would be a bit of a mistake. MaxPax sees the tank, sees the stim, sees a second tank, and he wanted to go into the usually totally free area on the very, very far right side of Inside and Out, but there were a couple of Marines waiting. Not enough to actually stop the Stalkers, but enough that it wasn't free to just roam around. And it certainly was not a position that MaxPax could find more with. Maybe he could have taken out the Marines, maybe he could have tried hanging around to get to this Marauder slow, but that is very dangerous. Stim is done. There was a lot more bio, and at the end of the day, there's still 4 tanks that could unpack, unsiege, and actually chase after the Stalkers if they needed to. The MaxPax is all about buying time right now. Little blink in the main, ultimately doing nothing. Now to use those Stalkers to try and pick off units just a little bit at a time, with hopefully not losing any of his own Stalkers, all while building up to that very important Colossus, and second Colossus more importantly, which 2 Colossus might go ahead and be able to, you know, stand strong against the incoming attack. But with 4 tanks joining the fronts, 3 tanks? 4 tanks, there you are, little buddy. That Colossus defense is going to last for so long. So MaxPax really needs to get ahead of the push, which is exactly what he's doing. And that way he can buy more time for more warp-ins, more upgrades to finish, but then actually get a couple of shots with those Colossus before they're blasted by the tanks, as Clem doesn't want to very slowly push. You know, 1 tank at a time would take a very long time. So anytime that he's fully on siege, the Colossus can come in, take a couple of shots, drain the medevac energy at the very least, and then back away. But once those tanks are actually entrenched somewhere important, like hitting the shield battery in the Nexus, well, then the tanks are going to shoot those Colossus down. Actually, good focus fire there. The Stalkers prioritizing killing the 2 front tanks was very much the correct move to do, and now nothing is under fire, nothing under threat anyways, until the next tanks come along as well. Which, just 1 tank actually, that was 3 tanks in the front line got bummed down. That is pretty good then, and Zealot's trying to buy more time and distraction as well, but Clem is going for a very powerful move, main base drop, quad drop, that MaxPax apparently did not see anything of. I think once he moved out and saw that there wasn't anything reinforcing or retreating, he knew, but that was the exact moment that the drop also unloaded, so still not enough warning to actually help out here. So far, not terrible, though. 3 probes go down, a Colossus was bopped, and that's certainly the most punishing thing about that drop. That really sucks. But that could have been a lot worse for how it seemed MaxPax was out of position. So MaxPax is very much on the road to recovery, as he does usually do a very good job of. I mean, I think he knows exactly what you have to do as a Protoss to cover a little bit of a deficit and to really annoy the Terran as well. I think he's very good at that. So these consistent run-bys are part of that. Now, occasionally, what happens is that the Terran player is so keen in on what the Protoss does, what MaxPax does specifically, that these run-bys never do anything, and that's a bad-looking game for MaxPax. But if they do something, if they pull him back, if they distract him, if they actually kill SCVs, well, then obviously that's exactly what MaxPax wants. He also moves ahead with his 2 Colossus. Now, it's only 2, But the bio has already been stinned by chasing everything around. Medevac's actually not getting that time to heal means that the Colossus are actually killing all these Marauders when they absolutely should not. But there's still so much left over, so many Marauders coming in. But at the same time, 11 SCVs just went down. Zealots are once again in a natural base. And at the end of the day, even if he chased to kill these Colossus, he wouldn't be able to deliver, I think, a game-ending counterattack with what he currently had. Going through the choke, probably loses most of the Marauders in the attempt. Yeah, GG. So MaxPax ends up controlling the game, as I think he likes to do, and then is able to roll out of it into a defense, and that defense was great, but the timing of his attack was even better. The Zealots are something he's going to do no matter what, but the fact that they were allowed to come in that proxy pylon was straight up a mistake by Clem, right? Which is what I was going to get into, but then MaxPax delivered the 1-2 blow, which is really quite good about that. Like, if he had just settled on doing the Zealot run-bys and said, oh, thank God, the Terran's off my back, let's go ahead and get a 4th base, I think Clem is in a totally fine position to play out that game. He gets to be the bully. He gets to control the flow of the game like he likes. But instead, MaxPax used the Zealot attack to get his army safely across the map as well. To get the army to overstim and all that good stuff. So really nicely played there by the Protoss, who is now up 1-0 in the top right of Trop of the Sacrifice. It is MaxPax. On the bottom left, we have the Team Liquid player, Clem. Clem not taking out that proxy pylon. Probably something he was shaking his head about when he was streaming this Open Cup. Maybe he did at one point, but MaxPax is also the type of player to send another probe out to rebuild the pylon. But I don't think he did that. I don't think I missed him tearing out the pylon. And I think that just is... That just comes down to him kind of prioritizing other things for a little while, and then possibly forgetting for a little while as well. It happens even to the pros. But almost certainly he knew that it was a proxy gateway and a proxy pylon, right? But that it wasn't of the utmost importance to take care of it from the get-go. And then by the time it was of the utmost importance to take care of it, things have already kind of unraveled. And MaxPax was able to continue digging with the Zealots. Very annoying, but again, not as bad if MaxPax hadn't done his main push. Ultimately, though, looking over the entire course of that game, still felt like Clem was supposed to be in a slightly better position. It really came down to having his units spread out, weakened from earlier attacks. Everything was able to come together at once and relatively healthy. Let's say that all those Marauders were at 75% health. So injured, but not in the red. Not even in the orange, I think, right? Then they get a concave on those 2 Colossus. I think that's exactly when you see Protoss clearly overextending. They get pounced upon by Marauders that aren't dying because they don't have those heavy-hitting Immortals or enough firepower from anything to actually kill them. And then suddenly the Protoss army evaporates because Colossus Stalker doesn't actually go up against a decent number of Marauders being consistently healed very well. But it just all kind of came together at the right moment. And that is something MaxPax is very good at. He's also very good at tripping up the Terran in general. So while other Protoss might try to replicate exactly what MaxPax just did in that first game, you steal the build, you do it on your own little ladder journey, and you ain't even a bad player, you're GM, you're not going to get the same effect at all. MaxPax choosing to go for a Robo Opener on Tropical Sacrifice. Did feel like this was something that I felt like I saw a lot of Protoss doing, but it's not a Robo Opener, it's actually a TT Opener, which... Yep, Twilight Council is done, so should have seen that coming. Dark Shrine, scouted immediately. Looks like the Adepts are hoping the Reaper would come back to help the Fens, but the bunker was there. The SCVs were safe. And the Reaper got to do exactly what it wanted to, which was get a full and complete scout. So usually you would say this is pretty bad for the Protoss. Yeah, you probably would. But MaxPax, again, using the DT opener alongside like the 4-gate opener to just simply gain control over the early to mid game, it can still make this work. But I think you would want to have the Protoss or the Terran player guessing a little bit more. Scouting the Twilight Council when you can fake the blink and then leaving. Scouting the Robo when you can still kind of make them suspect that it's a gateway or blink opener, right? But scouting directly that Dark Shrine so far ahead of when it's finished, it's hard to make this a good case for MaxPax. Let's watch and see. If the Warp Prism lives, that's doable. If it dies immediately, then it's really game over. That seems to be the main difference of whether MaxPax can recover from such a obvious opener or not. It's going to be able to avoid the Widow Mine. Yes, avoids the Widow Mine. Almost goes back into it, but now knows where it is, so is able to escape. A couple of DTs, or one DT went to the natural to get a handful of SCV kills. But as I said, the most important thing here seems to be the difference of MaxPax playing out an okay game and just playing out a game you would expect when someone gets a DT rush scouted, is if the Warp Prism lives. Now, the Warp Prism, able to fare around in a couple of Archons, able to add a little bit more damage. That is great. That's something to it. But also just the mere threat of a Warp Prism that the Terran has to consider is another reason why this single unit can sometimes make or break the follow-up, basically. Even when the DTs themselves don't do a whole lot. And certainly I wouldn't count this as great, considering what you delay to do a DT rush. So maybe one DT for 4 SCVs doesn't sound that bad in a different time frame of a TVP. I'd say right now it is. Clem should be feeling good about the opener, but he has been the victim of MaxPax's ability to adapt and overcome adversity. He has been the Terran that thought, oh yeah, I've got this handled, like no problem, right? And then died to something. Macro game. Think you're gonna end the game in 10 minutes, goes on for 20 minutes. MaxPax wins that one. Or to a follow-up extra cheese that MaxPax really doesn't do too frequently. Not really the type to go DT into Prism. Actually, just was prepared for that. Would have mind. Nicely done. Into Charge Lot, but I suppose could. And in this case, we got a couple of Archons with a handful of Stalkers trying to just be the most awkward timing attack I think I've ever seen. That was such a odd group of units. And I think what that does is that handles a little defense squad well. So a Cyclone and a Raven would be handled by that. A Cyclone and 5 Marines, a Raven and 3 Marauders and 2 Marines. You know, like the combination of units that aren't all of the Terran army. And then suddenly that little attack does a lot more than it ever should. And that is really a lot of the way you can explain how MaxPax or any Protoss comes back into the game. They kind of hit those vulnerable spots ever so slightly so that they can't be accused of, overcommitting to a vulnerable spot. And of course, they don't miss the vulnerable spot entirely. But that wasn't vulnerable. Clem handled that very easily, making it look a bit foolish. But certainly making a mistake that could have been very annoying for the Terran. And now MaxPax knows that it is desperate times for the defense. He has not been able to buy much time against his opponent. Clem is pushing out when he wants to push out. He's not been able to open up any kind of cheeky opportunities, like killing the Raven, although he's tried. And the army that he has is really not all that impressive, especially if those 2 Archons are taken out of the equation, killed, interference matrixed, either one, right? And if you're fighting away from the shield battery, you're also going to be in a lot of trouble. Reason number 1 to fight away from the shield battery in this case was to use those force fields, but hot pickup on the Terrans expected at this point in StarCraft 2. Raven is going to die at very full energy. The Stalkers sacrificed their lives for it, and the Raven is still not completely necessary to victory here for Clem. I don't think MaxPax is going to get away with any 1 DT at a time shenanigans. He's not going to get away with a Warp Prism, so that's something, again, that Clem no longer has to worry about. That Thorn picked out of his side finally, and he can focus entirely on the engagements. Now, 2 Immortals join the fray, many more Zealots than just a minute ago. This is now still it's always been an army they had to be delicate about, but especially with the Raven, with its energy involved, you knew you could probably take it on in the right circumstances. Obviously, a couple more warp-ins later, and it is back to being a little bit questionable. You do have to be careful how you engage, and Clem certainly knows that. Not going to over-dedicate with his initial set of units, which were eventually not going to be enough with the defender's advantage kicking in for the Protoss. And with the Medivacs also running out of juice, it really wasn't going to be enough, so definitely need to wait for those reinforcements. Also got his third base up and running, turning into an orbital now, making sure to defend against any possible DT attacks. For MaxPax, it's not necessarily very worthwhile to build a DT, even for harassment. He is just sticking to his old favorites, a couple of Zealots running by, but I don't know if it's really going to help him out too much. Clem clearly sees that he can take an engagement. He's got the lead here. He's upping upgrades, got a powerful army, plenty of Medivacs healing through a lot of the sustained damage of the Protoss army, and that shield battery overcharge is going to run out of energy basically right now. The Warp Prism comes home, or I guess the one that was remade comes home, to try and maybe help juggle the Immortal and Archons, which actually add a lot, but there's still so much bio. It has been stimming for a while, but with 4 Medivacs still with the energy, that is A-okay. It's managed to avoid being divided in 2 by the force fields, which Clem never really had to worry too much about. There wasn't that much force field energy. And now we do have Storm in effect. The Warp Prism actually ferrying storms to a time I did not expect. Barely in time, by the looks of things, or maybe not. Maybe not. Yes, in time. Yes, barely in time. And now the couple extra storms are sharking around for the final shots on Clem's army. Storm actually finishing at a pretty beautiful time. I don't know if it's perfect enough, though. That was close, and he was really close to getting some really good shots on it, too, but the Warp Prism is not going to be enough, especially as Clem is able to regroup and probably add on a Ghost Academy very, very soon. There it is, in fact. Ghost Academy is on the way. If he does wait for the Ghost Academy, if he waits for the Ghosts actually to come across the map and join on the front lines, then MaxPax might also be able to add on... no, I actually can't say that. I don't think he can... He can't gather enough complications into his army. At the end of the day, this is going to rely on Storms getting big hits for a while longer. And even with some big hits, that is a lot of Marauders. Medivac's out of juice, though. That always gives a good Terran pause. The first Ghost is on its way, but I think that'll be the kicker, won't it? The trouble for the Terran players when they can't stop the Protoss from getting a Storm, buying time, and then getting into maybe a couple of Colossus, right? And then the army's really complicated and no longer is just a simple avoid the Storm, win the game. But doesn't seem to be a chance that MaxPax actually gets to a Robotics Bay, even with 1 Robo production. Much less the 2 that a Protoss would want. Drop over to the right side, forces a recall. It's got to cancel. Actually gets the killed Nexus on the 4th base. And that's, might have just been the trick there. Didn't even have to wait for the Ghost. Just pulling some of the army out of position was enough. MaxPax almost half the supply of his opponent. Basically the case. Zealot run-bys again. Not really doing very much. Not going to kill a lot of SCVs. Not really distracting Clem all that much. And we're still relying on the storms, and that is, oh, those are beautiful storms. Those are perfect storms. Those are the storms that if they had happened a couple minutes earlier, would have given MaxPax a lot of breathing room. That would have been the 4th base finish and saturated mining and a second robo on the way with the Robotics Bay, and then Clem is ready to go again, right? But because they come in a bit late, we still have this army supply deficit. We still have this army composition deficit, and it looks like with that Wood of Mine scouting, we do have Clem knowing he's about to be attacked, because that also could have really tripped him up, fighting the whole Protoss army with only segments of his own. Could have been danger zone, but Clem knows to pull everything back, gather everything together. When he gathers everything together, that's all the Medivacs that he has healing once again. That's all the Ghosts with EMPs impacting the battle. And those EMPs are already effective. They don't get the storms. They do pop the Archons, pop the Immortal Shields, and everything collapses together from Clem to go ahead and take out MaxPax's desperate attempt to go through the middle of the map for a big old punch in the face. Didn't look like nothing. Clem takes a, not lead, he takes the map and ties it up. This is not a best of 5. MaxPax actually won the last game. I was getting very used to casting best of 5s, but this is just a best of 3. So tied up 1-1. Moondance coming up as game number 3. we'll see who goes on to face the winner of Lambo versus Kalazer. In the bottom right of Moondance, we got MaxPax. The top left, it is Clem. With so much of Clem's army dead from those storms and injured as well from retreating back home, if that had died independent of everything else, and that was the only warning Clem had, that MaxPax was moving across the map, I do wonder what could have happened. That might have been desperate no matter what, but desperation doesn't necessarily mean there's no hope. MaxPax had totally surprised Clem after taking down a good 40 supply of his army, so the ghosts don't get proper EMPs, the army's not concaved out, it's stuck in its choke somewhere. That could have been the winning move. Fortunately, Clem's Widowmine scouted it. And now we get a game 3 on Moondance, which all the maps are favored to Terran nowadays. Technically, in this matchup. I've always felt like Moondance was especially brutal for the Protoss. I'm not sure that's what Protoss are saying or talking about, where their frustrations really lie. But for me, when I watch Protoss try and handle the builds on this map that Terran can throw at them, I'm always amazed if they ever do survive. Not heard much from Innovation these days. Did he go to the military? Innovation did go to the military, and I believe he has stated that he has no plans to return to StarCraft 2. And yeah, maybe he's already out of military too. There are some players, I think, that you just get the feeling that they'll come back after military. And there are some players that you just are pretty sure won't, and Innovation was definitely one of those latter ones. Some might not want to and then feel obligated because, unfortunately, the very depressing real is that many of them don't necessarily have the best prospects outside of StarCraft, but yeah, Innovation, even if that was the case, I'd still feel like I wouldn't go back to it. Innovation has won a lot, so he hopefully has some cushion to do whatever he does want to do to advance himself in his life. These two players, obviously having no fear of military. Don't need to worry about that, especially because MaxPax is royalty, am I right, guys? Just kidding, he's not. But so young and already getting so much cash. Hope they're going to do good things with it. So Clem, once again, going for the factory expand of the high ground command center, really negating a lot of the early game harassments that MaxPax likes to do. Fortunately, for the state of StarCraft, this isn't some type of supreme hard counter. Maybe it's a harder counter versus someone who is not named MaxPax, where Protoss would really hope to be surprising a Terran, and the Terran goes, oh, seriously, and then kind of struggles to handle everything that's thrown at them. But for MaxPax, because he is so likely to do this type of thing, to send the depths out, to proxy gateways, you know, shield battery in the main, to defend against the Reaper, of course, there are a lot of quote-unquote like hard counters to it, where the Terran really doesn't have to worry at the very least. But they're not hard counters in the idea that, okay, now you win. You did the thing, now you win. Fortunately, StarCraft 2 is not as simplistic as that. Although I know there's many moments where you defend cheese and just wish that would just give you the GG button. That would just give you the win, give me the MMR that I deserve. For our entertainment of the esports, it's good that it's not. So for MaxPax especially, he's usually very good at doing the early aggression and then being fine if it doesn't work. Both mentally fine as well as actually in the game fine. Going into the Phoenix here, something that Clem did scout, by the way, as you forgot in his target was building, is one of those high skill plays that I absolutely know can work, but also at the same time feels exceptionally dangerous. The Phoenix play, important in, you know, two aspects: keeping them alive, which can be difficult if you fly over Marines and Cyclones, but also they do have to do something. You can't just say, I got to 7 Phoenix, so now I defend your push, right? You usually want to be picking off reinforcements, cutting into the SCVs a little bit. You know, you can't waste all of your energy hitting the economy if they even let you. And then, you know, you want to have your units in position, which is currently lacking. And this is exactly the type of push, really, not even the type of push, this is the push that I'm just amazed when Protoss actually defend against it. It is so damn difficult. Moondance is a short map with a very direct rush from your natural to your opponent's natural, and the shared choke of your main natural and third for the Protoss, I would say is a double-edged sword, but because this push is so common, it is specifically what is supposed to be bad. That you can take these tanks and get such effective shots off on a Protoss who's trying to bust out of their own choke. And this is a slaughter. This is very one-sided. The bio stimming in does have limited time without medevacs to actually do damage, but in this case, it has done the damage, man. Probes are dead, army's mostly dead. Phoenix, 2 Phoenix with lifts, are they gonna help out that much? Probably not. All the shield batters are gonna die, and that Colossus is gonna be depowered. And that's probably game. We are talking about an 8-worker lead if MaxPax were to somehow recover, but having not dealt with the tanks or the bunker or any of the reinforcements that would be coming along, MaxPax clearly knows how this game is going to go, so he taps out. GG. And seriously, this is just such a brutal build. Some of the ways that we do see a Protoss player win against it is like an extended period of time where they're anticipating. Which I think nowadays, for the Protoss, they should be very much anticipating this build on this map. It's not something that you can try and hard counter directly, because there's a chance they're not going to do this build. And I also can't think of a way to super hard counter it, but... so you predict it, you confirm it, and then again, going back to the Phoenix, I feel like these Phoenix, you know, are supposed to actually be going after maybe these SDVs right here. Maybe the Cyclone. You know, getting the tank first might be a bit dangerous because the Cyclone gets a lock on, the Marines join. But, you know, if you could get a tank, absolutely get a tank. And then I also think that you would have had to already plan ahead in terms of your Sim City, which I'm a little surprised that MaxPax had not done. So you having a partial wall can be helpful if it ends up being a Hellion opener, right? But otherwise, walls are just going to die to a lot of tank volleys. There might be some argument to be made about how they could be helpful against tank pushes, but... yeah, let's just stick with the fact that it makes it a smaller choke. And then what can happen that I've witnessed is a robo placed back here, for instance, is still powered and building that very important Colossus. And it actually pops the Colossus out, and you've saved maybe one of the Immortals. You've still got enough gateways. It'd only be 2, actually. Only be 1, really. To help out the Colossus a little bit. And then one Colossus takes care of almost all the bio that is accompanying this, and the SCVs as well, right? Doesn't necessarily take care of the tanks, though, so you do need something along with it, but even the Phoenix coming in to take them out of the equation can be it. But once this engagement happened... and I'm actually curious as to why MaxPax took this engagement. Yeah, and he kind of let the army into his natural. That was already kind of a bummer. I'm really surprised he did what he did with the Phoenix. Didn't try and cut off reinforcements earlier. Even though I could have sworn he knew what it was. This time maybe a little bit. I guess taking the engagement while the overcharge is up makes some sense. Because you could argue it's not how a Terran would want to take the engagement, as if the Protoss can just sit by its shield battery the entire time. But, you know, I think that actually does make sense, taking a ambitious engagement with overcharge if you didn't have such the choke to work with, the opposite of a concave, such a choke to work with. And the 2 tanks already siege as well, right? Like, because obviously this Immortal lives up to its name for a while. It just, nothing comes out of it. Yeah, this ends up being super awkward. He also didn't look like he was really focusing on anything. And Marine hits a bunch of... Immortal hits a bunch of Marines. There might have been some micro that we can't see because MaxPax doesn't stream, where he tried to get the Immortal on top of the tank, because he's certainly in range of the bunker, but he might have been trying to get on top of the tank, and then I don't know if any of you have done this, but you know, you're in a hurry to do something, so you focus fire and then you aim move your entire army. And you go, oh shit, and you focus fire and then you aim move your entire army. You're like, shit, and you focus fire. Then it's too late. I wonder if that happens, but his Immortal shooting Marines definitely isn't the best use of it. And then once he let this army actually enter in, like kind of once he revealed his weakness, kind of, yeah, it was gonna be hard to deflect. If this was anything other than just right into the heart of the Protoss production. There are some times where diving like that would be problematic. Diving gets you away from the tanks. Suddenly the army can be divvied up a little bit. And the army dives still in range of the tanks, but then the tank fire starts hitting your own army because they're trying to hit the probes. Splash damage hits you, right? There are times where that dive doesn't work out, but that was obviously a very correct, calculated move there from Clem. So he does take the 2-1, and he did go on to face, spoiler alert, Lambo in the finals, which is, yeah, up on my YouTube. I'm gonna go check that out.